Hey everyone. Well, this is part three it became a long answer. It was a 35-minute, just the recording part is 35 minutes. And this is part three of an answer to a question by one of the viewers about my interaction with the police as an African American, which I of course expanded to include even some comments or things I noticed from my days back at the seminary, as well as working within the Church of Sweden EFS. Many people may not agree with me, but it's not always easy being a person of color, even in Sweden. And Sweden's a pretty cool place. It's a pretty, it's a very decent place to live. I'm not afraid the police are going to kill me in Sweden, so I have to make that clear. And now we're in part three. But doesn't mean that every interaction with the police has been positive from my perspective, right? Well, watch the video, and if you have more comments or questions or anything, then let me know and I'll talk to you later. Bye. Oftentimes what happens is that as an immigrant also is that whether it was at schools, so we would go to have teacher meetings, parent-teacher meetings, and they always spoke to my wife because my wife spoke Swedish. And they would look at her and communicate with her and never even look in my direction or address anything. Even though they could have spoken in English, they didn't even try. There were a lot of things that excluded me from participation in society and at church. I haven't even come to the point that the very first Pentecostal church I came to here in Sweden, and they were passing, I'd been watching for a while, and, I'm a Christian, I was baptized, and so I had been going to the church. I've been going to two churches back and forth because I like the music and I like I started making friends. And so it was a communion service, and I remember, I'm looking at how they do it. I'm sitting kind of in the back, and they came out and they serve you. It's not like in the Church of Sweden you go around, but here at the Pentecostal church, the people who are distributing communion came around and they served you. And I saw everyone else did. I stuck my two hands out together, and the guy gave the wafer, the communion, the host. He gave it to the person on my right, looked at me and took it back. Gave it to the person on my left and kept on going. I'm like, what the heck? And I had my hands out just like everyone else did. They came around with the wine. I'm like, oh, maybe the first time they don't let you take the bread, Like in the Catholic Church, you don't get to take the wine unless it's you're dying. But you get to take the host, you get to take the consecrated bread. So I'm like, okay, maybe they do it the other way around in the Pink Church, And the guy came around, the second person, he gave it to the person on my right, looked at me, took it actually away from me, and gave it to the person on my left and continued on. When I talked about this later on, I could speak Swedish better, and I was preaching, I was explaining how important it is for congregations to be open and welcoming. You cannot just assume just by looking at someone if they're Christian or not Christian. And someone says, well, we didn't know if you were Christian or not. I'm like, why? We thought maybe you're a Muslim. I'm like, because I'm black? The only difference between me and someone else who was sitting there was the color of our skin. It was obvious that I was new. It was obvious that I didn't grow up there. It was obvious that I was an outsider. And that made me feel more like an outsider. So those are some of my experiences as African American. I believe that what happened with the police and what happens in churches and what's happened at schools, what happens at banks. Before, when people used to, we don't deal with cash in Sweden, so a cashless society almost. But I remember standing in line at an ATM. And I remember an older Swedish lady, she was standing there, and then she looked around, she saw me, she grabbed her bag, her purse, she pulled it around in front of her, she was like looking around, and she got all really nervous because this black guy was standing behind her with a hoodie. And so it's those kind of things. And Swedish people are like, oh, Ed, you just over-exaggerate. No, it's because I'm a minority here and a minority in America. And the segregation and the discrimination that I've experienced in America has made me extra sensitive wherever I'm at. And that's why I recognize it. When I see it happening to other people, I address it. We're at a camp one day, and then there's one young girl, and she's the only other dark-skinned person besides myself. So she's the only youth participant. And we had a speaker there, and the only example he could choose is one about someone being an immigrant, and he looks at us, and then everyone else in the room looks at us, and she was so angry because she says, I'm always being pointed out and reminded that I don't look like everyone else. When we went to address that with a person, not in anger or anything, we just wanted to make him aware, hey, maybe you're not aware of this because you're not used to seeing immigrant people at youth gatherings in the Church of Sweden, and he tried to defend it. And one of the things I've had to deal with is that defense of, I wouldn't say it's racism. I mean, I don't believe that most people in Sweden hate you because you're black. I think they're so uncomfortable with something that's different than what they grew up with. They're so uncomfortable with anything that's outside of whatever's supposed to be the norm. So they don't know how to act, and that nervousness, they do and say stupid things, wrong things. They're not conscious of how their words, their actions actually affect other people. That's most of it. That's how I look at it. It could be worse. It could be hate. It could just be that they think they're better. I don't know. That's how it is in America, at least. So in saying that, and here's the word. Here's my really big beef. So in Sweden, when they want to call you the N-word, they use a word and it says neger. Sounds really close, right? Also, the word that was used for black people during slavery. Now, Sweden was involved in the slave trade. Okay? I don't know if many of you people outside of Sweden know that. Not that many Swedes know that. Sweden was involved in the slave trade. It actually tried to establish a colony in Africa, failed, and ended up doing the typical Swedish thing. You know, what's lagom? And so they had the island of St. Bartholomew was given to the Swedish crown, and there the Swedes would make the equivalent. So they would look at the slaves. This slave is worth this amount of rum and chocolate and whatever other addictive things that drove the slave trade. So Sweden was actually part of the transatlantic slave trade. And it was like, okay, well, you know, whatever, Ed. There are a lot of countries in there. Yeah, and there are families in Sweden who are wealthy today because of their involvement in the slave trade. So my thing is what I want is that if the Church of Sweden could issue an apology to the indigenous Sami people who live here because of the way they were mistreated, mishandled, their culture was obliterated. I mean, they were treated like, you know, this thing about treating indigenous people all over the world like crap. What is this European thing? What makes Europeans think that they have the right to just crap on other people? I don't understand this. I'm not saying they're doing it now, but this has been part of the history and it still happens today. And so I'm waiting for the royal family of Sweden to formally issue an apology for their ancestors' involvement in the slave trade and the wealth that they gained from enslaving African people. So the Swedes didn't enslave anyone. They just, you know, checked out and what was worth, and they got a little fee for that. Come on. There were slaves on St. Bartholomew also. Don't let them tell you it wasn't. It was. I would like the Church of Sweden. I think their Archbishop, or the church meeting or whoever does it should just decide that they should make a formal apology to people of African descent, especially those in North and South America, for their approval of the involvement of the royal family and other rich people in Sweden in the transatlantic slave trade. See, for me, acknowledging those kind of things, that's a step in the right direction towards also increasing the diversity of the church. Because now we're saying maybe there's some things. It's the same thing with, I don't know if Sweden has ever formally acknowledged its own cooperation with the Nazis during the Second World War. I mean, there's so many things. And because I live here, and because my children are part Swedish, and this is where I grew up, that's where they grew up. Of course, I want to do everything I can to make a better world for them in the States, just like I want to make a better world for them here in Sweden. This is a longer video today, and I'll probably divide up into 2 sections because I see that it's getting long. But it does bother me when when I moved to Sweden, and people would use the word neger in church. And I used to always have to argue, I'm like, well, why would you want to, if slavery is no longer a part of the mentality of people here, and you think it's so important to support, imago Dei, the image of God that's in every single human being, because we're all created in the image of God, why would you use a word from slavery, a word that defines me as other, a word that defines me as less than you? And they would try to argue. So Christian people in the church would try to argue for the use of the word neger as though it was like totally okay. And I should be okay with being called something I didn't want to be called. Something that refers back to slavery. I don't think so. Don't call me your no, whatever N word you want to use. Don't do it. Negro's okay, you know, kind of, kind of not. But but it is that thing that happens in Sweden where Swedes don't want to accept some things that are not cool about living in Sweden, especially geared towards people of color. The reverse racism thing. So what happens is, as when people meet me, because I'm dark skinned, I look like an African in most people's eyes in Sweden, and so African people, they were treated, they're not welcoming them with their open arms, okay? But then when they find out I'm from America, all of a sudden it's like I get raised up. Oh, you're African American. You're American. Oh. The earlier video what I made where I talked about where my American citizenship is questioned all the time. That still bugs me. But this incident with the police, because you know I didn't really have the means to redress that. I mean, had it happened now with everything with Black Lives Matters and everything, then I think it would have been. It's so much more in the consciousness of people to be aware of what their words and actions and decisions, of how they affect people. So it'd be a lot easier to have addressed that. But back then, this is in 2006, it just, you know, people are trying to justify, what did you do? You must have done something wrong, Ed. Like, you know me. Am I a gangster? Do I walk around pong? Do I'm selling drugs, taking drugs? I mean, what? People know. I mean, if you know me, you know that's just ridiculous, you know? But so there was a bunch of things. I guess I just started ranting now. Does that mean I hate white people? No. Does it mean that I think everyone in Sweden is a racist? No. But we have seen, and I have experienced, and not just to myself, but say to people from the Middle East. So a lot of people from the Middle East have the same problem. They're not always welcomed by the majority white culture in Sweden. It's not that open, you know, and so we have some problems here that we just need to address and to deal with. And so these things, whether it was a school, whether it's the use of the Swedish version of the N word, we have these chocolate balls, and this was a joke that people would say. They're like, oh, there's a chocolate ball. Do you know what they're really called in Swedish? And everyone wants to see how you're going to react when you hear the word negerboll. Now, Swedes are going to get mad that I said that word, but that's what they were called and this is my experience. When I moved here, everyone thought it was a big funny joke to see how many times they could get away with using the word neger. And they thought it was really, but it hurts. That doesn't make me feel good. It's not a word that encourages. It's not a word that makes me feel like I belong. It's a word that reinforces the fact that I always feel like I don't belong. I don't feel like I belong now. Even when I'm working in the Church of Sweden, I've been working there for 14 years. And since 2005, and it's now 2011. So 16 years I've been working in the Church of Sweden, and I still don't feel like I'm really embraced. I don't feel like I really belong. I don't feel like there's a real place where I can be me without me being the poster boy. And it does bother always being the only immigrant, the only African American, the only dark-skinned person all the time. Pretty soon, my friend Hinnock, when he gets ordained, there'll be 2 of us in our diocese. Woohoo! 2. What are we going to do? And him and I will be working together this summer. I'll be like substituting in a place, and he'll be working there. And that's going to be really interesting to see how do people react seeing 2 black people as priests working at the same time. Really interesting. Because it doesn't happen. It is such a rarity. Oh my gosh. I'm sure people will be talking. So that's that. Yeah, I don't want to be a poster boy. I mean, if you hire me, don't hire me because you don't have any diversity and you want it to look like you're diverse. You hire me because I'm actually qualified to do the job, and I do a good job. Look at my qualifications. Look at what I can contribute to. And don't just look at my skin color and make a decision based on the color of my skin. It is very irritating to constantly be judged by how you look as opposed to who you are. Just putting that out there. All right? So that was this video. It was a little, this is a long video there. And that one big thing with the police was the worst one. And most of the time it's just that sometimes when the police would come to the church, they just didn't know, that the black guy was the leader or something. Or I would say most of my interactions with the police in Sweden, like 90%, is super positive. If I ask for help, the police will help you out and stuff like that. So I'm not against the police. I would like to see, I'm not against the police anywhere. I just would like to see that the police, the idea of policing, someone who helps to uphold the laws, who's there to serve, protect, and help people. That's what I would like to see happen, whether it's through education, or whether it's through something else. That's what I'm hoping will happen. But I'll never be okay with an abuse of power, abuse of authority, someone who has a Napoleon, complex or anything like that. You don't have to come at me with your gun or anything like that. Just talk to me. I'll talk back. That's what I do. I talk to people. And I hope that making this video will hopefully bring a better discussion, even in Sweden, about our own failings with, as we're policing the action of police, or when we're trying to work to have a more inclusive society, and not just pick our favorite groups that we want to include, but make it inclusive for everyone, make the playing field for everyone. I did want to come back to the place where this happened with the police, because I think it's significant. I think places have a significance. And now that McDonald's is not here, and now it's a big high-rise apartment, but there was some discrimination happening here, 15 years ago. So anyway, so that's an answer to one of the questions for one of the subscribers, one of the people watching the videos. Thank you very much for a really good question. I don't know if I would have come up with this myself or started thinking about this without you asking that question. Continue to ask questions, come with comments. I'll try to answer everyone I can. I don't expect everyone to like this video. I don't expect everyone in Sweden to think this is okay, or even in the Church of Sweden, but this is my experiences, and I'm going to tell the truth about what I've experienced and what I've been through, and what I hope happens. As you know, we're making these videos to see if we can get people to pray for us and to support us financially in the multicultural community called Cross Culture. Our podcast just came out this past week, Fika for Life. If you go in and listen to Fika for Life, you'll listen to my friend Lynn and I as we talk about different issues from the cultural perspective of a Swedish fika. We're sitting down, eating together, and just talking about life. All right? Well, everyone, thanks a lot for watching these videos. Thanks for the good questions. There's some more good questions also. I'll be making more videos about those. So take care, everyone. Be blessed, and let God use your life to bless other people. Look for opportunities to be a blessing, and be more positive than negative. And we've got enough negativity in the world. We need to start increasing the positivity and be more like Jesus. All right. Thank you very much for watching. See you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.